everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Murray Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry from our studio at the edge of the Great Red Divide in Marseilles, Illinois. We bring you Citizens United.
Be sure to catch up on all of our podcasts. You can do it on wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can do it on YouTube, on the internet, on demcastusa.com.
Or at Heartland Mamas, MAMAS.com.
We really need your help to spread the word, so like, share, subscribe. So we're talking about Citizens United.
We are. We're going to talk about dark money and how the hell did we get here.
Dark money is the real key.
Yes.
So we have to go back in history a little bit. And if you know our show, you know we typically go back in history to start to explain why things have happened.
We have to know where we've come from to know where we're going. How did we get here? And how do we make a plan to get the hell out of here?
Well, if we can figure out how to get the hell out of here, Heidi, I think we can be bazillionaires.
I think we absolutely know what we have to do. Do we have the guts and the gumption to do it for the next 30 years?
Right.
Challenge accepted.
So I'd like to kind of go back in time. Mm-hmm. I'd like to go back to 1976.
Don't you want to go back further?
Oh, sure.
I
like to go a little further.
When we talk about campaign finance reform, I like to go all the way back to 1917 to the Tillman Act, or 1907 to the Tillman Act,
which started to regulate how funding was done for our federal elections. And the Tillman Act worked pretty well until we had FDR and all these social programs that benefited people. It benefited people like you and me and brought forward our country out of the horrible Great Depression and World War II, spearheaded by FDR, and then at his death, Truman.
and then along comes I'm going to lose my train of thought here.
The Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. Why did Taft-Hartley happen, Marie?
Heidi?
Well, it happened because the corporations didn't like all the pro-labor stuff, the pro-union stuff that came out of FDR and Truman.
So what
actions.
you're telling me is that a group of wealthy
Republicans.
individuals,
Yeah.
capitalist corporations,
Right.
decided that they didn't like unions,
Right.
because it cost them more money and took profit away from them.
It took their profit away.
Regardless of what happened to the individuals who were working in those conditions. And you mean they didn't like that?
No, they didn't like it. So Taft-Hartley went through to limit the amount of union money that could go in to support candidates. And it was kind of a loosely defined goal until our very favorite Richard Nixon in 1971 started the FEC to make sure that the unions didn't over-donate to candidates. That
Isn't it funny that Nixon created the FEC?
The irony is not lost on me.
Yeah, right? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Side note, go ahead, continue.
So we roll along here, but we have to understand that all of these things
Are connected to each
connected.
other.
You know, like Tillman was the seed that sprouted,
And each
Taft-Hartley.
one builds on each other. So as the sentiment of the nation shifts, as the political balance shifts, so do our laws and so do our courts.
Right.
So let's take a look back to way back machine.
Wait.
We're going to go to 1976.
Okay. So we're trying to get out of the Reagan years.
Is that the do-do-do-do-do-do? What music was that?
We're trying to
during
get
that time. So we're going before the Reagan years.
Okay, that would be just pre-disco.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm
Early
really bad
metal.
at that.
Early metal.
But we need to look toward the Supreme Court decision of Buckley v. Vallejo in 1976. So this was the first true test of whatever sort of political or whatever sort of control we had over politics and money. And that was a challenge, saying that labor groups or special interest groups were able to advertise for a candidate on their behalf.
Right.
However, it had time limits from the election. So they were not able to do any advertising 30 days out from an election.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if we still had that? We'd have fewer political ads on TV.
Yeah, and this also defined. So when they made the decision to say, nope, you know what, that infringes upon free speech for those groups who have put up the money.
Right.
We can't curtail the speech, so we're going to let them do it. They did put in a caveat of those organizations. It was suggested that those organizations could not coordinate with the candidate. So
Right.
that's where we got that corporate veil,
So-
that political veil.
Right. So we actually were having, at that point, still in the 70s, had like a wall between these big money donors and the candidate. Now, where has that wall gone with Citizens United?
Well, before we get to Citizens United, we need to take a look at the First National Bank of, of Boston v. Bellotti.
Yeah.
And that was 1978. So this is where corporations were really granted the first steps to having free speech. That was where they were defined.
Where corporations were granted the right to free speech. I just want to let that sink in. Corporations
And it goes all the way back to
are
1978.
granted human rights.
Well, and that's the argument that they made in front of
Yeah.
the Supreme Court at
Yes.
that time.
Yes.
And that argument was not successful, as we can say. So what it was is that the justices decided that we could not curtail the free speech of corporations to be involved in political activities.
Right.
Now, that was because it cannot depend on the identity of the speaker. So political speech is free no matter who is the one doing it, whether it is a corporation or an individual.
Whether it's
it
Acme
needs to be free.
Corporation advocating for coyotes and roadrunners.
Which I think I've actually
Roadrunners.
seen that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we rise, and as we continue going, remember, now the Supreme Court has already said that there shouldn't be any limitations on advertising or amounts utilized separately from a candidate. And
Right.
then we have the National Bank v. Boston of Boston come in and they say, well, corporations have always had the right to speech. We can't limit any entity's political opinions, or that infringes upon our free speech.
Because, corporations must have feelings.
So let's then move into exactly our tax code. How in the hell does our tax code have anything to do with elections, Heidi?
Oh, Murray, I just did my taxes last night. This is a sore subject for me. So go ahead, Murray. I'm a little too raw right now.
I got it. So as we look at our federal tax code, we see that there are various groups that get tax deductions or are tax-free.
Right.
Many of those are what they call 501s. And there are different distinctions between 501s.
Right.
So if I'm a 501s are all nonprofit entities. And that's always suspect because if you pay yourself $100 million salary, then it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point being is that
there are a lot of good 501c3s.
There are amazing organizations that utilize their tax exempt status for good. We're not dinging on those.
Right.
But where the area starts to get gray and the waters start to get muddied are as we move into 501c4s and 501c6s.
Yep.
Keep in mind that churches are also tax exempt organizations.
And not all churches use this to a political advantage, but some do, even though they're not supposed to.
And how do they do that? Well, so when the tax code and these laws converge, we end up with laws that say if you're a 501c3, you can't have involvement in political activities in order to keep your tax exempt status.
Right.
Then we have these things called 501c4s.
C4s.
Now, those are a little trickier. They're special interest organizations designed to further specific agendas or of the interests of their members. Remember that phrase. It's kind of important.
And some of those do really good work, and some of them, a lot of them don't.
And you know what's kind of funny is a 501c4 was founded in November of last year.
You aren't talking about the Society for Women, Young Women.
And Engineers, LLC?
Yeah, the Scientists and Engineers, the one that that has no corporate address.
No corporate address, no physical presence, no board of directors, nothing.
Located in Hawaii, that just gave Susan Collins $150,000 before a crucial vote. Do we think that influenced her or not?
But this
We don't know.
organization was able to create and formulate and become a 501c4. And now the question is, well, shouldn't those guys have to release their members? Shouldn't we have to?
They
No,
don't. Under law, they do
because
not.
As a non-for-profit, under the law, you don't have to report who your donors are.
No.
Now, political action committees and super PACs have to,
Right.
unless it comes from a 501c4.
C4, right.
So are you confused? Because it really is a lot.
When Murray and I
to
started looking
dig
into
through
this, and we realized in our last cast that was just earlier this week on Susan Collins that there's this. She wears dark money like haute couture, and it's
Who
Fashion
doesn't?
Week. You know, well, I don't think everybody does. We don't. So the thing with
If you have dark money and you want to send it to us, that's okay. We bring this to you. We are happy to have your money. We'll pretend it's light.
we'll lift
Kidding.
the veil.
I'm kidding.
So here's the thing. We discovered that the FCC or FEC is completely understaffed and unable to investigate any of these things. They can't even form a quorum to look into these dark money entities like the Society for
The
Young
FEC
Women
no
Scientists
longer
and Engineers. The FEC, like so many government entities in Washington, Trump has gutted. He's gutted them, and this
In
protects,
order to consolidate power.
right. It consolidates power and it protects people that are donating dark money in this cycle. And here's the really scary thought about this. Trump could take $1 million donation from Russia, a multi-million-dollar donation from Russia through one of these 501c4s. And
They're
then
not supposed to, mind you.
and not-
Even those are supposed to have non-foreign money.
right.
If it goes political.
Right. But he doesn't have to account for it. There's
No.
nobody to look into this.
No. Well, and
And Democrats, you can do this too because there's nobody to look into it. So
if a foreign power found a sponsor in the United States
Yep.
and decided to set up a 501c4
always a backdoor
organization,
always.
say
Especially for Republicans.
An organization like Russian immigrants
For conservative policy.
right.
We just made that up. But
They are under the veil, and they do not
I
have to
swear
report
to
who
God,
their
Murray,
donors are.
if that entity pops up,
I'll know we're being bugged. Okay, straight up. I'll know something is definitely hanky on this.
we're just blown away at the dark dealing that we've uncovered in this past week regarding this issue. It's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. It's earth-shaking.
And the sad part is what we hope we're helping you understand is it's not necessarily just Citizens United. We like to demonize Citizens United as being this landmark decision that opened the floodgates for all of this dark money.
But it started in 1907 with the Tillman Act.
It started with our legislation.
Yeah.
It continues with our judiciary. It is now being controlled by our executive, who has taken away power from or who has empowered our judiciary to do his bidding.
And removed their checks and balances.
Absolutely.
And has been declared king by the Republican Party.
We are on the precipice of
Losing our
beyond a
democracy?
constitutional crisis. We have to
Right.
understand we passed that point. So much of our democracy was built with good intentions, and over time, each administration and each court has slowly changed those, and we have headed down a path. You know what really drives me banana pants?
What's that?
Is that this is the 10th year anniversary of Citizens United, and as we were doing our deep dive, Justice Kennedy, in his ruling, was quite certain, and I quote, "The appearance of influence or access will not cause the electorate to lose faith in this democracy."
Republicans will say anything.
69% of the voters from a Quinnipiac poll in 2019 said it has created more suspicion. It has. The system is, 69% believe that the system is rigged toward corporations and special interests.
It is, Murray. We've seen it in our cursory digging. And we could go a lot deeper on this topic, but it would be just so damn boring because we spend hours and days reading about this stuff, so you don't have to.
Right.
And the bottom line is that every time we have one of these seismic shifts to the right to block transparency, to create entities that can launder and wash dark money, to lift the veil of separating powers, to keep things from having checks and balances, it's always a Republican at the root. All of these seismic shifts have happened under
you
Republican.
You can trace them back to
every single one
Republican
of them.
Senates, which we talk about why it's so important to flip the Senate.
Right.
To justices that have been appointed and confirmed by Republican
And
Senates.
Republican administrations like Nixon and Reagan and
And we all
W.H.W. and
know
Trump.
that Republican administrations have been headed by our very own Goebbels, as we've talked about in the past. I'm sorry, Republicans got this down. They have cornered the market on almost every aspect of being able to do anything to fight this. Well, and that's why it's so important.
Every time legislation comes up to separate these, to regulate these entities, to create more transparency, the Republicans step up and say, no, you can't do that.
Wait a second, Heidi. You're not referring to H.R. 1 from January of 2019, are you?
I am.
House Resolution 1, or the, I want to make sure I get the exact wording. It's Politics for the People, basically.
Yep.
Is the H.R. 1, For the People.
For the People.
It passed the House in 2019 and has been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. And
it's in a pile.
What is For the People actually?
It's in a pile that McConnell will never take up. Never take up.
Oh, most definitely. So, H.R. 1 expands voting rights.
Yes.
It limits the gerrymandering. It strengthens ethics in politics, which doesn't matter how strong our ethics are because we have no FEC to enforce those ethics.
Right. Exactly.
It limits private donors in Congress. When we talk about private donors, since this is the 10th anniversary of Citizens United,
right?
Since Citizens United ruling in 10 years, the energy sector has donated $179 million to federal campaigns. If we go back in history, because y'all know we love our history, climate change was being addressed 20 years ago. It was being addressed 15 years ago and even 10 years ago. It was a bipartisan issue. Both sides found that it was crucial that we start addressing this and fixing it.
Right.
Citizens United was ruled, which
the Koch brothers.
Yeah. So what happened with Citizens United is, like we said, PACs, they have to say who donated.
Right.
But 501c4s can give them as much money as they want without reporting it, except it's from that organization.
I'll do this again. It's going to rain. Hang on.
Money!
and the thing is...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and today, Murray, I was reading a very interesting op-ed by Heather Cox Richardson
on our favorite Demcast, which is my new favorite website for everything.
Demcast USA is amazing, guys. Please make sure you check it out.
They have such a wonderful collection of writers and podcasts like ours, and information that you're not going to find everywhere else. So I was reading this op-ed by Heather Cox Richardson, and conservatives believe that government regulation destroys the liberty of men to run their businesses as they wish, and that social safety nets it takes away the wealth from the wealthy and redistributes
they consider
it
it to
be
socialism.
They consider it to be socialism instead of social programs to protect the people
that do the work for these corporations. Now, there is a movement afoot to end health care for the very poor. Trump is proposing to gut Medicaid.
I loved it. The State of the Union was so delightful, and how he's doing all these wonderful things, and then he puts his budget forward and slashes everything.
Everything. So he's coming after Medicaid and then Medicare and Social Security, which are two of those entities are funded separately. They have their own fund. But Medicaid is health care for the very poor, for the poorest of all of us who can't afford health care or don't have a job that provides health care. And the problem with that is we are in a pandemic with coronavirus right now. I don't know when you're listening to this, but so this is not the time to cut health care to the poor. And instead of investing our money in social programs, instead, this administration, the current administration, has used Citizens United and the money from these dark entities, these PACs, to help shape our value plan so that we're shifting money back to corporations, back into the industrial war complex, and away from people.
Mercenary capitalism.
Exactly. We've talked about mercenary capitalism before. And mercenary capitalism is the new colonialism because we've already conquered everything and killed everybody that got in our way. So now we have to kill off more people.
Space Force.
Oh, God damn it, the Space Force. Sorry, I don't use blasphemy very often, but
this is appropriate blasphemy, girl.
Seriously, Murray. We're talking about taking health care away from poor people and old people and kicking grandma and grandpa out of the nursing home. For God's sake, Republicans, don't give me any more BS about compassionate conservatism. There is nothing grandma can do to pull herself up by her bootstraps.
Maybe by her walker.
Well, Murray, I told you 2 weeks ago, I had a call from somebody in Indiana who is whose father is 104 years old, and because of Indiana's work requirements, because he doesn't use a cane or walker, he's required to work. He's 104 years old. To get food stamps, SNAP, he shouldn't have to work. He shouldn't have to work to get his Medicaid.
Okay, that is ridiculously
104
bananas.
I
can't eat
I can't. Well, that is compassionate conservatism. That is wrong. When I pay my taxes, I want it to go help people like that. I don't want it to give it to the industrial war complex. Period. I'm just absolutely livid right now. Can you tell?
Oh, I can tell, sweetheart. And Heidi is absolutely right.
I'm soapboxing
so
again.
No, you are spot on here. And sometimes I reroute the train, but she's got it. And the author, who is that author again? I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name.
Was Heather Cox Richardson.
Heather Cox Richardson.
First thing I've read by her, but man, I'm going to read everything she writes now because she's good.
Her writing is exactly what we are trying to explain.
Yeah.
It's not just the dark money coming in and being able to fuel political candidates.
What happens with that dark money? It's the cause and
effect. It's the messaging.
Yeah.
It's the shifting. It's the influence at the local level, the state level, the federal level, the presidential level. All of those things. It's the ability to create shows on conservative radio networks that talk about the values of the community. It is all of those things layered on top of each other that have been created by the conservative right.
And the conservative
single
right
bit plays upon each other.
It's not there to be compassionate. It's not there to help people. It's there to make more money for corporate America. Period.
So we create a narrative, and Heidi mentioned the narrative. And we talk about businesses as corporations, right? That they have free speech.
Right.
This narrative exists that we needed a businessman, that only somebody in business is going to be a good president, or somebody in business makes a better legislator than somebody in a social service.
Business does not offer social programs. Business is opposed to social programs.
And now, who would like the narrative that business knows how to run the government?
Well, Jeff Bezos, the Koch brothers, anybody who makes
more
money.
You mean businesses would like that?
Yes.
It's a giant, evil, horrible circle.
Who's Zuckerberg?
Oh my goodness! Let's not talk about him. I can't stand that man. We're thinking about starting a super PAC, so let us know what you think. We want to start a super PAC and launch all of our advertising against Mark Zuckerberg, making horrible claims because that's perfectly fine. It's up to the people to decide. I don't know. What is he? What can we say that he's done?
Well, I'll give you a personal It's something personal that I can relate to. I came across a hate group here in Illinois and promoting violence. And I reported it to Facebook, not once, but twice. I know other people that have reported it, and it doesn't violate their community standards. Here's the thing. This hate group is on the Southern Poverty Law Center watch list. It is on a right watch list.
Far white.
Far right. Far white.
Same
far
thing.
Right.
They kind of both
Absolutely
run together there.
And the thing is when the person is on their page holding a weapon of war while holding a toddler, promoting violence in our community, I think Facebook has to do their due diligence. Now, we do have a Facebook page. We have a Facebook presence. It's a necessary evil, I guess. But we have to somehow hold this person accountable for allowing this type of BS. If the Second World War were to Civil War were to happen, Zuckerberg would never be harmed in any of this. He would just
jump on his ship and go up to Space Force.
Like, whatever. He would go to his little bunker and he would be perfectly
in Kansas,
protected.
Underneath the ground.
No, they have. It's like
Was it Nebraska?
No, it was in Kansas that they have these rich people bunkers. But what I'm saying is that wealthy people and corporations are insulated from all of this rhetoric. But those of us that live and breathe and work and live and die in this community are not. We're not insulated from it. And we shouldn't have to deal with it. We shouldn't have to deal with threats of physical violence to promote and protect corporate America and Citizens United. So
this is why we really want to take our focus as we do the Oust the Eight. This is why we go into history. This is why we show the layers. While it's great that Bernie Sanders says he wants to overturn Citizens United, we know there's 2 precedent prior to that isn't going to be effective.
No.
We need systematic sweeping change.
Saying you want
HR 1 is a start.
HR 1 is a huge
but it's
start.
not enough.
Until we clear out the Senate of all these. I'd like to see all 22 of them go.
And really, once we get in and we start to really, I'm hoping whomever gets in, that you find a conscience and start to look at the laws we have. Let's take a look at the tax code. Let's go into nonprofits.
Yeah.
Let's find out why this is happening and fix it on that end. And we may not even need rulings like Citizens United because we will have fixed the problem at the root.
The thing is that these problems have been going on now for almost 100 years, right? Over 100 years with the Tillman Act in 1907.
And the removal of the Fairness Doctrine, and it all
and the Federalist
compiles
Society
together.
The thing
like our author, Cox Richards, Heather said, it is a concerted effort and plan on multiple levels to build a false narrative, convincing us that this is the best way to go.
And here's what they do is they use one-issue voters, Second Amendment voters, and abortion rights voters. They use those one-issue voters.
Anti-immigrant voters.
Bigots and racists. They use those voters, and they use those hot-button issues to get them to vote along these conservative lines. And when you ask a conservative, what exactly does that mean? They don't have a definition for it anymore. Not people who live in a trailer park. They have no idea what does that mean to be I'm a conservative. What does that mean? Oh, I don't like it when gay people marry, so I'm going to vote for a Republican. Okay, so when you vote for that Republican, you've also cut off your SNAP benefits, your Medicaid. You've ended all social welfare programs, and that ends up hurting you, and you're voting against your own interests.
Because we are told by this narrative created by conservatives that you can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Nobody has bootstraps anymore.
Right, except Grandma and her walker.
Oh, well, maybe Grandma. She might have them in her closet.
105-year-old. Just give him a cane. Come on now.
Paul, that's what I told him. I said, you need to get yourself a walker. I'll bring you one if you want. Have your doctor declare you unable to. He drives and stuff still. And I'm just like, why do you have to cut yourself off from society in order to get your food stamps because you don't have enough in your Medicare or your Social Security to buy food and medicine and pay? I don't know. Why do we do this to people?
It's because of mercenary capitalism. It's because of greed, power, and profit. Everything we've seen happen, the repealing of advertising, the repealing of personal liberties, It's all to consolidate power and create a false narrative that people will vote against their own interests.
Right. People will sacrifice
because
their
of
own
that.
interests to identify as Republican, to identify as conservative, as anti-immigration, as anti-women's reproductive rights, as anti-immigrant, as anti-whatever. And here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. When you vote against, or when you vote for one issue, you have to look at what else comes with that. When you vote against women's reproductive rights, or you vote for Second Amendment rights, which no Democrat has ever threatened your Second Amendment. Your president has.
We mentioned this before, folks.
Yeah, we talk
Pay
about this all the time.
attention.
But when you vote for that one issue, you have to look what also comes in that handbasket. Unpack it and take a look inside, and you're going to see that it's a social pariah.
Just like Citizens United was heralded as the worst possible case for dark money, for politics, it has a long history. It was built through social movement. It was built through our tax code. It was built by repealing legislation. It didn't happen in a vacuum. So when you see these conservative messages, like Heidi's saying, or these things happen, it's not out of the blue. It's been
not in a
something that's
vacuum.
been building for a long time.
It's like building blocks. You know, they put one in and they put another one in, and then this one comes out like Jenga, so they've got to put a different one in until they build this platform, not for you to rise from, but for corporations to block us from rising over. So it's all about money
and power.
And power. The consolidation of money and power is the epic business goal in this
Isn't that
country.
pretty much why we've always gone to war? Money and power.
Oh, exactly.
Resources and power.
So here's my takeaway from reading about this, from everything we've done from this podcast, is this is an important election to win in 2020, to hold the House, to take the Senate, to take the presidency. And then we have to hold it for 30 years, because we have to understand that as soon as we get Trump out, as soon as we change the Senate, they will launch another teabagger party and come after us again. They will try to
funnel money through 501c4s and push the narrative, change the narrative.
We were talking...
And we believe it. Don't believe it.
Don't believe it. We were talking today, Marie and I were talking today about Michael Bloomberg's candidacy and how he's out there in the public eye every day with his really good TV commercials.
He's got great ads,
and how he's changing the narrative of the presidential campaigns. Here's the thing. That money's going to good works that could help, but there's other money just like it that can change that narrative to, we have to go to war against Iran.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is how big money needs to get out of our life.
While we are enjoying the commercials and his feist for Trump, it still is,
fun.
Even though it's on our side,
yeah,
it's still not good. It still takes away the ability for representatives to represent their constituents. It puts more importance on corporations over people.
Right.
It reduces the ability for the government to check power and make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of all of our citizens.
We have given money so much power in this country that there is no room for humanity. Our life expectancy is getting shorter. Every year it goes down. It's because corporations are living longer and people are living shorter lives and smaller lives.
So we hope we've given you some information that you might not have had. It was a lot to unpack. You might want to listen to this episode twice. Overall, the takeaway is nothing happens in a vacuum.
No.
It's all layered upon each other. And every time you go to that voting poll and you pull that lever, remember the implications ripple.
Never, never, ever be a one-issue voter. Never, ever. Unless your issue is defeating Donald Trump, then that's okay. That's okay.
Or flipping the Senate.
But you have to understand that if you are a one-issue voter, whatever that issue is, you need to unpack whatever comes with it, because nothing happens in a vacuum.
So thanks so much for joining us, guys. We will be back again soon with another episode. Have a great time. Enjoy your week. Remember, Heartland Mamas.
MAS.com.
Get us on Demcast, anywhere you find your Spotify.
Like, follow, and more importantly, share.
Share our message.
Take care now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.